right. Welcome to Reefside Radio. We're here in the podcast studio, Miami studio. I'm sorry to Shay in one of our prior episodes. I completely botched the name of the studio, so I'm sorry, Shay.
The energy was there, though, because this is a beautiful studio.
I was ready to go.
He's ready to go. He was so ready to go. It went a little bit different direction, but we're here now.
But yes. Podcast studio Miami. If you're interested in recording here, you can go to that website and book a session. Also, obviously, we're here at the Lab Miami, sponsor of this show. So shout out to the Lab. It's been a busy week around here. We're going to get into some of those events that took place here in our recap episode. So this is a little different. It's just Eric and I.
Switching things up a little bit.
Switching it up. Yeah. How's your week going? Let's hear your rosebud of the week. I want to hear your rose, the thorn, and the bud, I guess, which is what's upcoming.
Which is what is upcoming. So Rose, starting this podcast, man, with you, though. It's been a phenomenal experience. I have been put through the gauntlet of being on camera and all this stuff through the last 3 years, but this is special because we get to articulate this direction and be creative in how we want to present not only unique people that are in the ecosystem, but what's actually happening and what we want to see happen in the ecosystem. So right now we're very focused on these concepts and the ideas that are coming together from the people that we introduce, but as we move forward, what could happen? What should we see? What do we want to see? And hopefully we get into that, and we will get into that in today's conversation. So
I love that.
That's my butt.
That's okay. Wait, what was
the good? Well,
that's
rose,
the good.
right?
That's a rose.
Yes. Oh, the rose. Okay.
The thorn.
The thorn.
What was a thorn in your?
What was a thorn? I missed a day in the gym.
All right.
I mean,
how dare you?
I know. How dare I? But it was a good one though, because I caught up on a lot of stuff that morning, work wise, which is good. So, not a bad one, but that's because I had a really great week, to be honest with you, man. I didn't really have too many thorns. That was a little prick. And it didn't even cause any blood. So that was my thorn.
And with that side chair we had in our podcast with Danny, you look jacked. So it doesn't matter that you lost today. That wide angle was great.
I mean, man, I don't want to look too wide, but if it's a compliment, I'm gonna take them all. I'm gonna take all the compliments I can get, man, for sure.
I love it. And what is the bud you're looking forward to next week?
Oh man, One, I'm traveling a bit, so I definitely want to 100% get in meet some new people through some of the places that we're gonna go. And also, the real big one is that I'm gonna be visiting family, so want to get back in touch with them, and I'll be balancing a little bit of work with that, but. It's always good to see family over the summer. Summers in Chicago are always nice.
Summertime shy, man. Nothing like it.
It's nothing like it, man. It's nothing like it, man. The summer hasn't been too brutal for us in Miami, but summertime in Chicago is special. It's a special thing. It's the best.
I'm heading there too. That's my bud heading to Chicago too.
Nice.
We didn't time that up at all.
We're both going to Chicago at the same time. It's crazy.
It's just meant to be. Middle of summer, a little summertime shy. It's the best. Seeing family. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be good stuff.
A lot of fun. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. My thorn of last week, I was telling you about that. My swimming times.
Yeah, dude.
I had a mix-up ChatGPT.
But you got to tell people why do you care about your swimming times, man?
No, we're not.
We're not doing that?
We're not getting into that.
We're going to save it for another time.
Yeah, I'm just like swimming, like racing, stuff like that. I'm not going to be that guy on the pod. But yeah, I had a mix-up with ChatGPT trying to calculate some swimming times, and that was my first ChatGPT hallucination that spiraled me into a week-long panic around that, but it was just some math issues. We got sorted out. My bud of the week, two new things launching this week. We launched the pod, which has been a blast. Just that new 0 to 1 phase and editing and finding our jingle. I can't believe we found the jingle on the first take.
Guys, he literally opened up the app and clicked one button, and we heard the first jingle. I was like, "That's perfect," and it was
meant to be.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. It's good. I like the jingle. That, and then this week at the lab newsletter was a blast to launch as well. We had it going for months, but there was no soul behind it. There wasn't really in like a first person writing thing. It was kind of more.
No, it was well done, man.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
I meant to give you some kudos on that.
Met a bunch of people at events this week that were like, "Oh, I read it," and I'm like, "Oh, that's sweet." So excited about that. 2 new products launching, and now we're here on Reefside Radio. So we're looking to do something different. Obviously, there's not a guest in the room. It's just Eric and I. And we're going to do a little bit. We don't know what we're going to call this type of segment, but it's going to be.
We'll think of a clever name later.
Yeah, some type of recap where we both come with 3 takeaways from the week, from our events or experience or meetings or something we saw, interesting takeaways from the week. And we're going to kind of ping pong through those different topics. We each have 3. And really just have a deep conversation about those things. So we got to figure out a name for this. It'll come.
It'll come. Like with all good things, so organically. Or somebody will bring one to us, and we'll be like, "That's the one."
Mm-hmm.
If you have any good ideas, I would love to hear them. Yeah, we would love to hear them.
I agree. All right. So with that, Eric, what are your 3 takeaways from the week? Let's give a little teaser, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So first one is we were having a conversation with Danny, and towards the end we had this wonderful conversation about being civic minded. And I've always asked this question about like, what does it even mean to like care about like what's happening in the community from a civic perspective, but then also like what is the role of government and things. And I don't want to peel too many layers back on that, but that's one.
Okay.
A second is really thinking about, community in terms of, I've had 2 conversations around community. One, when we were talking with Ernesto, I thought a lot about, what is it that baseline a community, how do you create one? But create one in a way that actually causes impact. And, our big thing for us is change making, but like, how does that create positive and good change when you create communities in that way? But then we also had a wonderful conversation about community when we had a meeting earlier this week. And so some of these ideas came together, and I want to think about that or discuss that a little bit with you, because you've are really in depth on building communities. So love to hear your thoughts on that in particular. And then one is the last one is a conversation I was having with an entrepreneur, but then also a podcast that I listen to regularly, and this combination of an idea that we all are not talking about the same thing when we say early stage. And that's been a topic that people have talked about a lot, and I don't want to belabor the point in terms of like actual stage in terms of investment. I want to talk about it in terms of what resources we think early stage actually needs throughout the life of it.
Okay.
And so there's a difference between what people need when they start something conceptually and what they need when they're receiving like seed investment from that perspective. And I think financially, we all know what that looks like. We know what investment looks like at pre-seed and seed and Series A stage, except some people are blending pre-seed and seed now based on like how much people are asking for. But I think in terms of ecosystem building and community building, what does it actually mean to provide support, and how can we potentially maybe improve on that? And I don't know if I have any outstanding solutions, but
that's what this pod is for. We're going to jam on it.
We're going to jam on it.
All right.
We're going to jam on it.
Those are 3 winners. I like those.
Yeah.
From my end, I want to talk about the AI for Operators event that we had. We mentioned it on the podcast, I think, with Danny, because it was later that night. But I want to talk about what I saw in that, what's going on with all of these AI workflows and AI agent tools. It's blowing my mind, and I have a tool of the week as well that has really blown my mind. So I'll tease that. I also want to talk about grants for startups. We had an awesome meeting with the Impactify team, and they were kind of blowing my mind on grants for startups, and that's something that I've never really looked into.
It's a deep topic, man.
Yeah, I also think there's some serious AI opportunities there.
Yeah.
Based on some of the challenges that they were sharing. And then I want to talk about everything is so easy with AI now. And in the context of this week at the lab newsletter and this podcast, the 0 to 1 phase of something is never been easier. And it's unbelievable how fast and efficient small teams or one person can really create a lot of output.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into that. I have some examples from a couple of years ago of what some of these things look like, and now with these two projects, just an unbelievable difference in kind of the back end operations of those things. So that's the topics. Where do you want to start?
Man, I want to. Let's start with that grants topic a bit, because I found that very interesting when we were sitting down and having that conversation. And you hear a lot about like companies that are specifically geared towards potentially getting a grant, like a company that does anything that could be dual use. And for those that don't know, dual use is it could be used for a commercial purpose in regular everyday life for us as citizens, but then it also could be used in some type of defense capacity. So it could be used also for the military use. And that's a really simple setup. It's like, oh, obviously this could be used for the military. So like it should probably get a grant from the government for that perspective. But when you start talking about, not your everyday startup, I don't want to make it sound like that, but a normal startup that doesn't have those types of considerations, you're like, well, where do grants fit in with that? Wonderful thought process, because normally we're like, there is no place for those things.
Yeah, and I always thought that you either had to go federal or state or kind of like a local nonprofit type of organization, and that meeting really opened up my mind to the hundreds of thousands of grant opportunities that are out there and how difficult it is to find them. We got a grant for the Shrimp Society back in the day.
Yeah.
It was through the Knight Foundation, and that was a very local type of thing.
Yeah.
Met in person. It was very person to person, and it was not I didn't even know of any other opportunities or grants that were out there. It just seemed like a good matchup. And when we were talking with the Impactify team, all of these different opportunities, and I guess just the thought process of, there's thousands of Knight foundations and thousands of smaller foundations and bigger foundations, and it seems like there's no place to find those types of things. But now, I mean, there's got to be an AI tool coming out that is somehow aggregating all of those things and speeding up the actual grant writing process and the feedback process and all of those things. I feel like that's an area, I don't know if I'd call it a niche because I'm sure it's big, but a niche tool that could have big impact for startups, because most startups when they start thinking that way in different programs that we've done, a founder will be like, I want to apply for grants. And it's kind of like, that's a long process.
It is, normally.
So based on their capital needs and the timing, it might not be the best option, but it seems like that's ripe for just moving a lot faster through that process, on the searching, on the writing, on the feedback, things like that. So I don't know. In your experience, I feel like you're more in the grant world. Like what do you experience, as like the status quo or in the past, and what do you see AI making a change on?
So you bring up a good point, right? That there are certain processes that exist when someone is going up for a grant, depending on like how, I don't want to say high up, but whether it's a federal grant or a state grant or county or local or from a foundation, which, I think people don't look enough to certain foundations. It could be difficult to consider going after a grant because of how long it used to take, which when we say how long it used to take, the process was you look at what the grant asked for, you get all the documentation you need necessary. And as a startup, sometimes you have to create new documentation in order to fit that. Then you have to go through the application process. And then when you finish the application process, there's normally some type of screening that happens. And then depending on how much money it is, normally the more money it is, the more barriers there are. Obviously, there are additional screening process, there are additional interviews, there are maybe some in-person fly-in type of stuff.
And what are they screening for? Is it basically like due diligence and fundraising, like a similar thing where they're checking all the legal stuff?
Kind of, but you don't index to money making, you index to impact, right? So if I am going after governments can have a wide berth of what they consider would successfully complete a grant. Sometimes a government will give a grant, like we had programs where we gave out grants where our only goal was to be an economic boost to certain areas in the city, which is always a good thing, which means that, yes, they have to do something, and yes, we have to track that impact, and yes, we have to understand what they did, but there wasn't a quote-unquote ROI specific to a direct metric that the city would have.
Okay.
Whereas a foundation might say there's a specific impact that we're looking to have, which is we care about education. Your thing needs to affect children's education. And so how many kids through your technology that you have can you support in getting additional education, being educated better?
We need to see 2,000 high schoolers received a certificate that they can build an AI model or something.
Correct.
I don't know. Yeah.
So like let's give an example. Khan Academy, right, has been talking about more personalized education in some form or fashion. What if a startup said, actually, we could do it better than them, and we want to go after a foundation that cares about early child education, and we go to that foundation, we apply for a grant, and we state that through our application, we can educate 1,000 kids through this personalized system, and that they will go from being illiterate to literate, or they would all become financially literate, or they would all be able to leverage and use coding in some type of way, or we would all teach them AI prompting so that they can better use AI before they even get into high school. There's some articulable impact that they can make through their technology, which will qualify them for the grant.
Okay. Got it. So I guess what doesn't click in my brain is when I think of grants, I think of nonprofits. And so startup, for-profit, Delaware C Corporation, how does the nonprofit or grant money get there? Do they have to go through a fiscal sponsor, or is it all? That was like the big roadblock, and it's not like a huge roadblock. It's possible, but that's why I thought, these grant dollars wouldn't go into private companies. Or
and a lot
companies.
Of times that's what blocks that situation. Sometimes the grant making entity is specifically looking for opportunities where they can pour money into a 501c3, which would allow them to have some type of tax beneficial outcome, right?
Okay.
Because if I give money to a 501c3, then I can use tax write-off effectively as a foundation. Sometimes that matters. Sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the program that the foundation is specifically running to do said thing. Sometimes that's why you'll have certain people. That's why we actually had a conversation a lot about different, not only foundations, but different government entities during that meeting, because governments care about that, but also at the same time don't, because they index more to certain types of broad-based outcomes as opposed to also having to worry about a bottom line. Because a non-for-profit foundation, while they do have, some of them have endowments, some of them don't. And so they still have to have more financial considerations than a government would, which just has a tax base, right? So it just depends.
Interesting. So, I mean, I guess my main takeaway is that grants are a legitimate opportunity for startups that aren't the grantee, like the typical grant startups you would think of. I'm sure that's still a great route for those types of organizations, but for more, like you said, traditional startups that aren't in these grant-funded spaces, it seems like there's an opportunity for someone to come in and just make the Robin Hood of grants for startups and have it all listed there and
That's
quick apply and help you write it and help all that stuff. If anyone's listening and knows of that company, I would love to check them out.
Yeah, because that's the blocker, right? It's indexing through all of that. It's like, I need to find criteria that fits me, and I need to not read 30 applications in a row that say, oh, actually, we're only looking for nonprofit organizations, that we're looking for anybody that can create impact. And there are a bunch of social impact organizations that are for profit, and they have to index through that already. Yep. So that's a big thing, man.
Okay.
Big thing.
Awesome. Well, let me throw it to one of your topics. While we're kind of talking government grants, let's throw it to the civic mindedness you brought up.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
So Danny, at the end of that pod that we did earlier this week, was talking about he wants to see more civically engaged people, which I super index to. I'm like, way more people should be voting and getting into that and staying away from politics, but being involved in whatever your politics are. Act like you care and show up, right?
Yeah.
But then it brought up a better question around like, where does tech and innovation sit in being a civic force for good? Where when we create really good businesses and we create really good innovations, how do we impact people outside of this ecosystem that we built, this tech ecosystem that we built? Because unless you build a very, 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 very successful consumer app that helps so many people in X particular way, right? Like you build the next Uber, you probably aren't dealing directly with any citizens in your local community by any means.
Yeah, just
right.
Internet,
you just
software,
software cranking
wherever,
it out, and who you talk to is purely based off of who's going to be able to directly help your company. And there's nothing wrong with that. As a founder, you index all your time. I keep saying the word index.
I know. That's the word of the day.
That's the word of the
Index.
day, man.
Yeah, I'm like,
damn. you end up creating mainly opportunities for you to grow your company, and so that makes sense to do. But a part of me is like, do we have any responsibility, especially as our companies become successful, to do this local community ecosystem leaning thing that exists not only in our own ecosystem, but in the places that we live and operate within? And part of me is like, yes, but the other part of me is like, that's not a founder's obligation. And a lot of founders ask us when we do really good support for them. We do a program for them. We've done a workshop for them. We have a really good meeting with them. Like, what can I do for you, man? And at least I always say the same thing, and I've heard you say this a lot of times. Be successful.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're successful, we all win, and we're all good. And I truly, genuinely believe that. But then the question that I have is like, okay, well, when they're successful, how does that fall? Like, where does that go? How does the success distribute out to the places that we're in, like a Miami, right?
Yeah. Oh man, I have a lot of thoughts on this. In a way, I kind of think like a university system is a good microcosm or a big cosm of a community. Or when I think of that, you have people with different skill sets kind of going through, and maybe you could say the early stage startups are like a freshman, and then the Series A is whatever, and you kind of go up there. But then you have the breakout successes, and then there's always the callback for the endowment, right? If you have an alumni.
You send that little letter out.
I think the guy who started, I forget his name, the guy who started Magic Leap was a guy, and I've seen him talk at things, and I'm sure they're asking him for all sorts of donations. So there seems to be that natural progression too in startup ecosystems. I think it just manifests differently where, let's say this founding team has a breakout success, they have an exit. It's almost like that comes back as either new initiatives or angel investments or new funds. I think that capital gets recycled. It just depends where that founder that does exit ends up, at town hall, we talked about the 8% problem and kind of all the downstream effects of not getting funding specifically in South Florida or Florida and how that affects a startup. But from a civic perspective, Danny said something, I think it was like 30,000 people voted for the mayor or less than that, which blew my mind. I think we kind of went through an interesting thing with Mayor Suarez and that whole tech boom that happened because there was a lot of vocal leadership around one common cause, right? There was like a calling card, like this is, what was how can I help, right? There were shirts made, there was coffee at town hall or at the city hall. So there was a very clear agenda that was being pushed and that, the tech community seemed like for the most part got behind. And so I don't feel that now. And I don't think that is, I don't know any other ecosystem where that exists. And maybe that's why it was so novel and why that, got so much hype novel around the country. It seems like it's more so the startup community leaders, a lot of investors or exited founders, people that have kind of had success in the ecosystem, then return back in a giving manner to kind of help lead and create the things for the next wave. I think that's a lot of what's going on here at the lab. And there's other leaders in the community that are doing those things. But I think that the Mayor Suarez thing was almost like an anomaly.
100%.
But maybe the community in general is kind of used to it, and now that's not as big of a part of the ecosystem. It's kind of like a call for more leadership to step up.
It is. And a good question comes up is, what does leadership look like? Where does that leadership fall, right? And I think it becomes a little bit more balanced, right? You don't hope and pray that somebody's going to be able to duplicate exactly what Mayor Suarez did, right? Like that's, I don't want to say that's silly, but it kind of is. He's a very charismatic, unique person. Like that's very difficult to do. What you try to do is you balance. You say, okay, well, there are going to be civic leaders who do care about the tech ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem, and what effectively would be the tip of the spear, the business ecosystem more broadly as things move forward, both at county and municipality level, however you say. There will be people who do that, but then that's also balanced by really strong leaders in the actual business ecosystem that say, we want these things and advocate for these things, right? Based on what they know from the private sector is going to make sense. And then those things come together, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also complicated. Like I've never been into politics or government. I just haven't really been interested in it.
Yeah.
But if there was a website or something that was just like, hey, these are the things that matter for people that are into tech and entrepreneurship in Miami. These are the things that you should vote on, and these are the candidates you should support, and make it really, really easy. I could get behind that.
Well, but that's the problem, dude. Nothing is ever easy.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about government, because there are some things that have downstream effects, right?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, anything that has to do with tech and innovation technically falls in under some type of like economic development thing. And so a larger question people have is, are there things that exist for business owners? Because every entrepreneur and founder is a business owner. And so if there are things to help them, it would have a lot of impact. Like, you would probably be on board with a resolution or some type of legislation that said, if you are a business owner and you just got started in your first year, there will be some type of like tax credit for you so that you can have an easier time to have. You can get behind that, right? Good. You're like, that sounds amazing. That would be a wonderful thing to have. But it never comes out that clear because, one, that's a very pointed piece of legislation. It could happen, right? 100%. I would. Yeah. If you thinking about it, do it. But then the question always comes up is, who pays for those things? Who takes a loss on that? Because there's some balance that's given to it respectively. So it might not be that specific. It might be something like, oh, well, we want to do something to improve how education and schools in particular find space in Miami. And you're probably in your mind, or the normal citizen would be like, why would that matter at all for tech and innovation? It's like, well, maybe if you thought about it, that would make it easier for executives who have children to find more schools. And then that would allow them, like there's these indirect things that could happen, right? And I'm not saying that those things would specifically happen, but there are indirect things that if you made it easier to operate in other ways, like your personal life, it might make it easier for people to make certain decisions business-wise. And so that's where being civic-minded is kind of really important, especially for us, because there's so much tied up in being a strong business community that you have to have some of these personal considerations alongside these business ones.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting example because I've heard people talk about that, people with kids in school age talk about schools and can't get into schools and no room and commutes and all that stuff. We got to find someone who's can come on the pod and talk about that. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there. We could... Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll table that.
We'll table it, but we'll have some thoughts though. We can definitely fall on that too. Yeah.
So what is I guess if you had to sum up that takeaway, like for you personally, is it like that people should just be more, or do you have ideas on getting people more, or just frustrated with, or not frustrated, but shocked maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not a big person on moving out of spite or anger. I know this is. I mean, I hope so. I just don't think that that's a good measure for people engaging long term. Right? It's good for a short spurt. Like if you had something that people needed to get behind in 6 months, it's like this thing is happening. But I think the best thing to do is to help people understand what we were just about to open up a door to, which is how these things indirectly impact the things that you care about, and to focus on just one thing, right? There's 10, 15 different things that we could have a week-long discussion about that would matter, right? But to be completely frank, let's start with one thing and then build upon it from there. And you might have considerations that fall on one line or another or this or that. And again, politics aside, there's just certain things that we can look at that we would want legislatively, regardless of where you sit, that would be helpful for the ecosystem, right? That at a municipal level doesn't really matter what side you fall on, because that's just good for everybody who is a business owner here, or that's really good for the local economy here, or that would just open up more opportunities for people who are thinking about coming here, right? Just focusing on certain things like that helps to get people interested in the matter. And then it can start. And it doesn't stop there, but it starts there.
Yeah, maybe what we could do is also, I'm thinking of guests we could have on to unpack these things. Like to have, like, what is the rundown of the current, the legislature, what's on the docket, at the city and county level as it relates to tech entrepreneurship, business ownership, employees, all those types of things. It'd be cool to do a special on that.
I think so. And, people forget it's not just, the city of Miami. It's like 32 municipalities in this county. And then there are 2 other counties that make up all of South Florida. And so there's a bunch of different people operating at different places that want to talk about tech, want to do stuff about innovation, want to have more things happen in their neck of the woods. And we all live in all these different places. So it's happening. The conversations are ongoing, but that's where it's important to figure out, like, okay, where can I lean in? I live here, so I want to lean in here. But then there's people who live in other places that are not far from us, like they want to lean into in different ways. So conversations to be had.
Yeah. I love that. Where do you want to go from?
So you were talking a little bit about you have 2 things on AI that you want to dive into. I need to know about this tool. I'm excited, but you're putting together both this pod and the newsletter, because I literally was sitting right next to you. Bravo!
Thank you.
And what thing did it change for you the most, having AI part of that process?
Yeah, so I'm not a technical person. I'm not a software engineer, and been building startups my whole life, and I always felt like my hands were tied behind my back trying to build things, and would take them as far as they could go with wireframes and duct tape together Zapier and Google Sheets and all that stuff. And I think that's part of the startup process. But there's a lot of little things that never made sense to invest the time into because it was just too hard to make this custom thing that you wanted. But now you're able to make so much custom stuff so easily. It is blowing my mind. So with these 2 new projects this week at the lab, we're using Beehive for that. One, just like by far the best tool ever for a newsletter with the Shrimp Society. That newsletter was on Wix. And then I think it was on Wix. Wix's email sender, and it was a nightmare. Like you'd like write half the newsletter and then it would just delete it, and like it was an awful experience. But there weren't like recommendation engines. There weren't monetization and sponsorship like native tools to it. The editor wasn't great. The deliverability wasn't great. The stats weren't great, and now we're seeing it just. I mean, maybe Beehive is not a great AI example, but they have tools that help you write with AI and stuff if you want to go down that route, and AI image generation and all that stuff. But it's just so easy to start a new thing, to get something off the ground now, whether that's a website and you want to build that with V0 or Lovable or whatever it is, a web app with those same things, being able to integrate APIs into a web app is like mind-blowing. As a non-technical person, being able to string together the Luma API and this from Zapier and that, and have this all in some type of dashboard. It's just the Notion API, like it's really unlocking a lot for non-technical people and operators. And it's also, I'm sure, for technical people, just making their life a lot easier and faster with what you can build. And so, you know, with this podcast, being able to we use CapCut and editing the sound and this, it's amazing. AI is amazing. Being able to drop these clips in Opus Pro, and then we use Cast Magic, which is actually a Miami company. Really cool.
Oh, they're a Miami company.
Yeah, we interviewed Blaine, the founder, and Built in Miami 2023, and they're bootstrapped. He had a company, venture-backed, blew up, after I think like $10 million in funding. And then the next company, Cast Magic, he's like, no, we're not raising, we're bootstrapping, and they're crushing it. It's a kind of post-production podcast software where it listens to the episode, gives you transcript based on the different speakers, and it gives you summaries, and it gives you show notes and timestamps and all that stuff. And that would take forever. That would be such an inefficient use of time to sit there and listen and press pause and do a timestamp and do that stuff, and then to have summaries done by yourself listening back to the episode. It's just amazing how you can go from, we'll end this episode and in like 10 minutes it's on Spotify and YouTube.
The speed at which we finished that episode, sat down, like we told you guys, finished the jingle, got the jingle immediately, then got all of the text around not only the description, the different cuts, and the actual episodes, so like where things happen at, and got it published on 2 different channels. And I had to, like, 10 minutes is not far. It had like 10, 15 minutes. It's fundamentally changed how we probably would have did it, and maybe would have not done it had we known we would have to do all of that without a full, producer.
Yep, I remember maybe like 2019 when I was at that cybersecurity startup. We were trying to do a podcast with CISOs, and I was kind of leading the charge on that, and we were doing Zoom recording. I don't even know if it was Zoom. It was probably Zoom, but Zoom recordings, and then we'd have to take that and just manually edit it in like QuickTime. There was no chance of doing any audio stuff because I think the softwares at the time were pretty expensive, and we were a startup, and no color grading, any of that stuff. I think we got like $30 mics on Amazon. And it was like a week-long process, honestly, to get one podcast recorded and edited and published. And I don't know, I just think it's a big opportunity. I guess that's kind of my main point here, is from a publication, growth marketing, content perspective, the AI tools are really incredible. And now my other topic around, AI agents and how these things string together, there's really an unbelievable efficiency for kind of the operations, business, marketing, sales side of the house that it was not there before, and it's amazing. And I know one of the points you brought up too was early stage not being early stage. There's kind of no reason you shouldn't have a product out now.
100%.
Like when I think 100%. About the accelerator and I think about the companies we're seeing here at the lab, like no one is pre-product for long. And if they are, I think it's kind of a red flag.
It's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Why haven't you built the thing? Why haven't you built an attempt to build the thing? Like there should be some type of product that we can play with that gives the most rudimentary idea of what your concept is. And there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't have at least that done through Claude, GPT, Lovable, Bolt, V0, something. There should be something that exists that we can look at and say, oh, this is how your thing works, even if it doesn't work well. It does not matter, because we should at least be able to see that the vision of what your product is in your mind has been translated to, oh, this effectively works like this. And then we kind of can build upon that, because we have nothing to work with. Ideas are malleable to the degree in which they're like air.
Yeah. And I just think you're not going to be able to fundraise off an idea unless you're like a prior exited founder and you want to raise a really, really early round. Like there's a member at the dock who joined about 3 months ago, no experience whatsoever in anything technical or software, wanted to build this kind of credit assessment application, spent his whole career in finance.
And tell him about him,
And today he just texted me. He's like, "Hey, the MVP's ready. Like, let's demo it." And it's amazing. He built it with Bolt, I think, because from our last meeting, he was building with Bolt and working through all sorts of different things. And yeah, the game's changed. When I think back to 2023, the first built in Miami, majority of people got stopped at
that point.
Okay, you have a validated concept, you have a visual prototype. Now you need to build this MVP, and people are blowing past that. Like that's not even. I kind of want to get into your early stage. It's not early stage because it seems like that part is like table. Like you have to have an MVP now.
It is table stakes. It's table stakes. 100%. And there's two things that dramatically changes. One, it changes what founders need at that point, because now we're not having a conversation. Like I know if you really know your stuff now, whether you're able to articulate it to this AI. It's like, do you really know and understand your industry enough to be able to build this thing? And obviously there are caveats to that, where there are people who are building companies that you cannot build that type of software
right,
for.
Yeah.
That exists, but those are kind of more rare than they are common. And most of the time you can build out something that can operate as some type of platform or application that gives us a good sense and understanding of how users, whether that's a business or an actual consumer, would use those things respectively. And that changes not only what resources would be leveled to you to be able to get to what effectively we would love to see, which is your first couple customers, because that's the big marker where we're like, okay, this person has something. It's like they've gotten some customers through the door, they've gotten an initial pilot set in, they've gotten this thing done to where somebody else in the world has validated that this thing at least is not the worst thing they've seen of all time. They're willing to pay for
Somebody
it.
wants this
Somebody wants this thing. They want it enough that they'll pay for it, which is a good indication that somebody actually likes the thing enough, right? But then there's also this other side where our thought about what is valuable when talking to investors, what actually makes a difference in them understanding what has value, right?
Yeah, totally. So many thoughts on this. Like, I feel like we're like everything's changing right now. Like as we're going through it. I was listening to Mark Andreessen on a podcast recently, and he was talking about how the difference between a good startup and a great startup is harder to see versus a bad startup versus a good startup, or a good founder, bad founder, great founder, good founder. And it does seem like right now, if a founder is not able to do that over a relative period of time, right?
Yeah.
I think the capacity and time to learn these tools and build something and tinker with them and have it blow up on you and then rebuild it again and ask a friend for
There's
some
always
help.
a time factor. Yeah.
There's a time factor. But outside of that, after 3 months of kind of going for it, then you have a bunch of people that all are at that stage. How do you define who's better at recruiting, right? If you can build something on your own and you didn't have to recruit the CTO or the early engineer that's going to work for a promise of equity to get this thing off, it changes a little bit of how to think about those things. And then I guess it puts more emphasis on traction because you're able to just validate things before the pre-seed check and start generating revenue for a lot of these things, especially when you tie in what I was talking about with the marketing, the sales, and the AI agents of those types of things. You can get pretty far.
Yep.
Then I guess it's more of education and capacity, right? If the person's not full-time, they still need a salary from their day job. That's maybe the blocker on a lot of these things to get that first round of funding. We saw that a lot.
Yeah. And it puts a different spin, right? So there are always going to be companies that, one, either because they have so much baked into the concept and the concept is so radical or at least perceived to be as innovative, that they're able to sell people on that concept and its infancy version of that product, right? And they don't need a bunch of customers. They just need some people that say, I would buy this thing, and they can get some investment. But the vast majority of people are going to find themselves in a position where there has to be some type of established traction for them to be able to actually move the needle forward. And obviously, we're in a time right now where AI is being evaluated from an investor's perspective as having a premium, right? There's a premium placed upon that, which is why valuations are so high. And the question becomes, when we start to see this balance out a bit, to what degree, I don't know. We probably are at a new normal in terms of pricing, but probably. But when it balances out a bit, will founders still find themselves in the position where they have to get more and more increasing levels of traction to be able to prove to an investor that this is actually what makes sense in terms of an investment? And I try to push back against that because I'm like, not ever increasing levels. What it really is enough traction for you to prove product market fit all over again. It's like, now instead of trying to prove product market fit on slides, we are proving product market fit in the field. And to what degree you need to prove that is based on which investor you're talking to.
Yeah, and I think the capital needed to get there is less. I mean, going from, like, let's say you raise $500K with some initial traction, and now you're going to try to scale up your revenue and show that product market fit. Previously maybe you were going to hire 2 SDRs that were going to book calls and spend their day making 50 cold calls and the other half of the day going through initial discovery calls and then sourcing new leads and being on LinkedIn. And now you can use a lot of AI tools to do that, like Outbound Labs, for example. Like, let some AI agents run and start booking discovery calls.
Yeah.
And I think those things are only going to get better. And so now that's $5,000 a month instead of $15,000 a month to still get that same amount of discovery calls to the founder to close them. Now, that depends on all the intricacies of the startup and the founder, if it's the right fit. But the go-to-market motion really changing, I guess, in 100%. Terms of the capital needed for it. And I think the founders that are looking for an edge in doing those things and having, a really structured prompt, system within their company that they use to create scale, or they're using agents, or they're using different things, to me, such a green flag of, okay, this person's not afraid of this technology. They're not trying to go to war with this technology. They see it as, a really efficient way to get stuff done for less. But yeah, tell me more about this early stage is not early stage. We were just talking about kind of idea to.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, there's two separate conversations that are happening, right? One conversation is how investors have always talked about early stages being everything from like the concept basically to A. But founders haven't necessarily been talking in those terms this whole entire time. It's mostly been early stages seen as, before I get a check, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sophisticated founders and definitely founders on West Coast use more a stringent and strict way of thinking about it in terms of how investors think about it. So, leading up to A, I'm probably not early stage anymore, but pre-seed and seed, I definitely still am relatively. But founders, especially in our ecosystem, like early doesn't seem like that. Early is like, oh, I didn't get a check yet, so I'm still early.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and I guess that's a broad statement in terms of, early not really being early anymore. But especially here, we have the biggest potential to, because AI democratizes so many different things, to remove ourselves from having to talk about early stage in the way that we were talking about it. Now we can start to be a little bit more standardized in how we think about early stage because we have more opportunities to leapfrog forward. The issue that comes in again is how many people are really leaning in and taking advantage to be able to move at that pace to get the traction that they need to be able to be,
Yeah, I think
qualified
with early stage, I agree. I think the Miami early stage is different than the Silicon Valley early stage, right? Which is everything
exactly
pre-A or maybe even sometimes A included. In Miami, I think it's much more idea to like pre-seed or seed even. To me, within early stage, the signal that really seems to determine where you are on that is, are you pre-revenue or post-revenue?
Yep.
Even in just conversations around the lab or in our programs, that seems to be the defining line, really, because there's a lot of things that you need to be post-revenue, right? You need a product, you need something going on. LOIs are great and all that, but it is a very different operation motion of the company when you're post-revenue and trying to grow that and have that accountability to support your product and support your customers versus pre-product. You're still tinkering and trying to figure things out. And you're always doing that, of course. Even post-product, you're tinkering and figuring things out. But it's, it carries a different responsibility and weight, I guess. It's kind of when the startup, in my mind, is like, okay, you're out in market, you have customers, different set of goals at that point versus pre-product. The funding rounds are all over the place in terms of what people think, like pre-seed, seed, friends and family, angel. Everyone uses kind of different terms there. Even in the accelerator array, we have founders who are raising, let's say, the same amount of money. Some are calling it a seed, some are calling it a pre-seed.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah,
it's all over the place. And I guess the biggest thing that I mean when I say, it's not necessarily early stages, not really early stages, is founders' perspectives on what early stage is changing based on how the route that they have to take to be able to grow beyond being quote unquote early. And whether they're like your colleague bootstrapping straight up, they're like, look, I don't want to take VC checks anymore, which is a completely different kind of conversation now because people are starting to look into that a little bit more so. Or whether they are positioning themselves to take one check and be done, or they're trying to run the race and they're like, look, I'm as many rounds as I can build up to, so because I want to be public. And we have people who are actively pursuing that now. I think it's changing. It's changing with the nature of how venture is changing. And there's a lot of things in venture that make me feel very confident about the direction that companies who are those breakout companies are going to be able to find a lot of success doing not what we've always done or what the industry has always done, but following a very similar path of what's always been done. But then there's a question about what happens for the vast majority of companies that don't find success in that pathway and what they're supposed to do. And I think we're going to find a different way to support and engage with early stage based on that. Where founders are just finding ways now. There's like through bootstrapping or through trying to like only take in one round. But I think there's going to be more opportunities and more things that open up over time.
Yeah, I think a pretty seems to be a common conversation going around at dinners and around the lab and stuff like that is how the fundraising tranches, I'll call them, or stages are changing, where if you can move faster with a lot of these AI tools, you can get a product out more efficiently with Cursor and with other tools. Like everything is just moving faster for less money. Is it advantageous for a founder to try to raise a bigger first round of capital?
Yeah.
I think realistically, like currently today, what we're seeing is a founder's going to raise friends and family and a little angel.
Yep.
And that's going to be quit your job and go all in on this and get a little bit of a team and get the company off the ground with this product. And then it comes into, like let's say that's 200 to 500K or something. Then it's, do I do a 1.5 seed or do I try to just keep growing and then do a much bigger round, like a $5 million round at a later time and not grow so quick from a revenue perspective as you would if you dumped in 1.5 million, but improving your valuation and kind of skipping a stage. It just seems like, I'm not sure where we're skipping yet, but it seems like just about every company is trying to skip a stage of funding.
Yeah.
It seems to be on their mind, whether they're successful on that or not, but it seems to
question,
be on their mind of how can I either skip that friends and family and get a product out with these new tools and with AI and get to revenue and skip that first round, or can I skip that second round, which is kind of like, let's grow the team to 8 people and start pushing on sales and marketing. Can we skip that and do that in a more bootstrapped or capital efficient model? I don't know that they're skipping the A, maybe in some cases, but yeah, it seems like a lot shifting around in that.
It's definitely that pre-seed and seed conversation, right? And pre that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The angels and friends and family round. If a founder is able to get to seed without having to raise, they save a lot in equity, which is amazing. But how many of them are able to hit a growth rate where a seed level investor says, I would actually cut and check into you now, which has caused a lot of these founders to just push up the amount that they're asking for, like you were just saying, where, instead of, pre-seed where, $500,000 is like 1.2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, that seed round is, that would have maybe been a 1.2, 1.5, 2 million at first. Now it's 5, right? And so that it's weird. And we're going to find out where we land on that, whether that's, just price inflation or whether that's, no, we actually need more capital to deploy now because we want to move as quickly as possible now because of what's happening with the industry, just generally across the board, not only with AI, but my specific industry. And then I want to, quickly grow at scale.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
And like, there's instances of this now. Like, I think it's happening. It's on the radar. I don't think a fundamental shift to the early stage funding landscape is happening tomorrow. But if you kind of play this story out over 3 years, now when you look at a traditional seed fund, they have an ownership target. They have an average check size. Let's say that average check size is $1 million, and they want to come in at some valuation terms. Like, are they gonna not be able to deploy enough into that $5 million round to get the ownership that they want? And are they gonna have to deploy too much into the 400K round where they can't really go there? It's interesting. I don't know the answer. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it could play out where the the seed funds need to move downstream or upstream, or just change their ownership targets and average check size to accommodate some of these things. And again, these are like anecdotal, kind of just early stages of seeing some of these things. I have no data to show that this is like a giant wave. It's really just, in conversations and working with founders.
For sure.
It'd be interesting to get the data. I guess we got to kind of see it. I still
we
want to
talk
see
to
it
some
out.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have some friends that I'm pretty sure can bring in some good data and information, not only anecdotally, but from what they've seen in market. Just because it's been a fluctuating thing, right? And so data will tell us historically over the last, like, let's say 6 months over this year, what kind of what deployment has looked like, but it's shifting, and so that could change as things move forward.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we have time for probably one more here. Where do you want to go?
Where do I want to go? Where do I want to go?
Do you want to hear this tool of the week?
Oh, dude, yes. Yeah. I said I really wanted to hear that. Yeah, give me the tool of the week.
The tool of the week. A little bit of background here. We had AI for operators. I touched on it a little bit before. But anyway, the cliff notes are we had, 70 or 80 people show up for this event without really any promotion. And it was very clear there was a lot of demand for this type of event and a lot of demand for business operators, sales, marketing, business owners, HR, anybody in that operator or non-technical category to figure out and use AI agents. And so super engaged crowd. We were packed at the dock, like standing room only. I was not ready for that. And so a ton of energy and excitement.
For it, though, man.
Yep. And the format was really demo based. It wasn't like a long lecture of this is what agents are. It was, I want to see what people are building, get up on screen, on stage and share your screen of literally pull up N8N, pull up Relay, what kind of stuff are you building and why. And it turned out awesome. We had a range starting from really like workflows with AI, with Relay, which was I like Relay. Relay's cool. Ernesto mentioned Relay as well.
Yep.
That's kind of more of like workflow with AI workflow, however you want to call it. Then we got into two companies. One is Brain2, which is the founder's name is Rodrigo. He had just moved to Miami 2 days before the event.
2 days?
Yeah, 2 days from Colombia. He had a successful tech company in Colombia. They sold it. He moved to Miami, came to that event because he's building a platform to build AI agents. So that was cool. He was excited he's like, this is my first demo ever of this product. Let's do it. Let's do it live.
Nice.
So that was Brain2. And then another company, Lematic, which is here in South Florida. They are how do I describe them? An AI agent builder for SaaS applications. So they're under the hood. Instead of you having to connect your SaaS application, your Lovable, your Bolt, or whatever front end you're working with, to N8N, which has a lot of just not enterprise grade type of functionality that you would want if you want scalability.
Right.
They are the platform for building your SaaS application that is agent-based with their platform.
Okay.
So super cool. They're also involved with the AI Collective here in Miami.
Nice.
And then we had Serge from Miami Hack Week, Hello Miami, who he took us on a tour of N8N and a lot of workflows that he had built there. So amazing event. Lot of appetite for people to learn about this from an operator perspective. And so in that, my tool of the week, which someone brought up, is string.com. String.com.
Okay.
Great domain. Probably cost a ton of money.
It had to have.
It was an existing company called Pipe Dream, I think it's called. Or not Pipe Drive, Pipe Dream, I think. And they have this new alpha product called string.com. And it is an AI agent for building AI agents. So prompt-based. You prompt what you want the agent to do. Similar to Bolt, it outlines it. It asks you questions. We need to do this. We need to integrate with this API. We need to do all this stuff.
Plan of attack.
And then it builds the agent, just like Bolt or Lovable or these vibe coding tools. And then you can click into an N8N style workflow builder and get granular and make any changes or troubleshoot that you need. Because when I've been trying to build some of these agents, one, taking kind of my thought process with ChatGPT of how to build this and then translate it in N8N, get a little stuck. So they handle all the setup and building it out, and then you can come in and make customizations. But man, it blew my mind. It was very awesome, meta AI agent builder for AI agents, but it's sweet. It's an alpha right now.
What you built with it?
A project I've been trying to build for a long time around here. If anyone comes to our hack nights on Tuesdays at the dock, you know I've been trying to build an AI agent that takes our Luma calendar, all the events there, creates social posts based on our brand tone that we have defined, and we have a lot of examples of the brand tone that we've written. Schedules those into Social Pilot. And then all we have to do is review and click send.
That's sick.
That would save a lot of hours a week. And I've tried Vercel, I've tried our V0 from Vercel, I've tried Bolt, I've tried Relay, I've tried N8N, tried a lot of different things to make it happen. Part of the problem is Luma's API is the worst thing ever. And there's just a lot of things that don't make sense in there. Like you can get your own hosted events that are on your calendar, but not other events that are on your calendar. And anyway, so I'm hopeful that String can make it work, but super cool. String.com, check it out.
Sick, man. Sick. There's some API hookups to Luma. Maybe we'll work through some of those. That might be helpful. But I am going to try that out. Because I made agents before, but they're always isolated. So I can use them in a particular way, but I don't normally, making a workflow with them requires so much more integration. So I just haven't done that part yet. But that sounds like an interesting weekend project.
Yes, there you go. There you go. Well, awesome. I think that's it. I think that's the pod.